Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Believe in Hawks episode. And you see, if you're watching this, I have a special guest on the screen. You may have heard of him. One of the main content creators in the Atlanta Hawks community. Mikey from Sports Atlanta Hawks podcast. He is one of the co-hosts of that show. Definitely go check it out if you have a chance. Sir, I'm glad you're on the show today. Talk some Atlanta Hawks with me, man. How are you doing first?
I'm doing pretty well, Bryce. Thanks for having me on here. This Hawks season, after the 2023-24 season ended, we knew we were in for a ride as far as what was going to happen with this organization, and getting the number one pick, trading DeJounte Murray, having the two Hawks in the Olympics, and now almost 2 months away from training camp. It definitely hasn't been a letdown as far as interesting stuff to talk about this offseason with the Hawks. So excited to be here tonight to talk with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you coming on, man. I appreciate you coming on for sure, man. And, obviously, like you said, there's a lot of things happening with this team as the offseason has now gotten to the point where it is now. We're kind of in the dead period, as people say, in the league right now. But there's still discussions, I think, where you'll see from any NBA team at this point where you just start talking about the roster, who we expect certain things from, certain guys are going to start, et cetera, just all of those things together. And for our conversation today, I wanted to talk about Jalen Johnson. He is a guy who a lot of Hawks fans have been excited about for a while now. They see the talent. They see what he brings to the table. And now, based on how the roster has shifted, trading DeJounte Murray, it seems like he is now positioned to be the number 2 guy on this team. So I wanted my first question to you to be, do you think Jalen Johnson is ready to step up into that number 2 role with Trae Young?
I think, honestly, for me, it's not really a question if he's ready. It's more of, I think he has to be, because for this Hawks team to really get where they want to be, and that's a championship down the road here. Jalen Johnson, I think, has to be either the first or second best player in this Trae Young era. Whether he surpasses Trae Young or not, I mean, obviously that would be great for what Trae is now. But if Jalen Johnson can become a consistent mid-20 point per game scorer, or even take that step up from what he had last season, that 16 points per game, up to a consistent 20, that's huge for this team. I think he has the ability to do that, though, because when he first started out last season, I was a bit skeptical heading in, just because we knew he was dangerous in full court, in transition. His passing ability is still in the half court, especially from the wing position, was something that you don't see in a lot of players his age. And when he was shooting the 3-ball like he did to begin the season, and when he was scoring at will in half court settings, which, to be honest, I didn't expect him to develop that half court game that quickly. So if judging by that progression that he made from the 23 season to the end of the 24 season, early this spring, this offseason has potential to be a huge jump for him. And I think that has to come with his handle. I think the shot will come eventually. Quinn Snyder, it has emphasized spacing the floor, shooting wide open shots, not passing up open threes. And for Jalen Johnson, I think the next step is kind of creating his own shot off the dribble. In transition, we know he can carry the ball 94 feet and get to the rim. But how often is he going to be running the pick and roll, say, Onyeka Okongwu sets that screen, or even Clint Capella? Will we see him more with the ball this season in the half court? I think that's going to be the next thing I look at with Jalen Johnson, because if he gets a little bit more shot creation, combined with Trae Young, how he works in the pick and roll and how he can work in transition, if he adds that half court shot creation, I mean, we're looking at a player that has all-star potential for years to come.
Yeah, and obviously if he reaches, like you said, that all-star level, that would be great for the Atlanta Hawks and what they're trying to do, as you said, trying to eventually become a team that competes for championships. And, I think one thing with Jalen, we've seen the workout videos so far this offseason. He's been in the gym. He's been working on his game, which is always important. So very excited to see how he applies that to this year and his new, it seems like, evolving role now within the team. So then that goes into my next question. Obviously, he now is that two guy. And one thing you can see sometimes in certain leagues is that you need players, especially your star players, to be able to play off of each other. I think, DeJounte and Trae, they weren't really able to play off of each other that great. There were moments, but it wasn't consistent.
Yeah.
This is different. Jalen's a wing. He's your 4. Trae's the point. So you would think there's a natural more chemistry between that just because of the positions that are involved. So what do you think in terms of that pairing for both guys? It feels like it would make sense because of Trae's elite passing, but also maybe an underrated thing could be the fact that Jalen can pass the ball. And again, if the Hawks want to use Trae and some off-ball stuff, maybe that could create something. What is your opinion of just that duo together and the expectation for them working together on the court?
Yeah, like you mentioned, I think the most obvious thing is, just how they can work in the pick and roll. Trae throwing a ton of lobs to Jalen. But I think one of the biggest aspects of his passing ability is how he can be utilized in the short roll. We saw even back when Nate McMillan was the coach of the Hawks, and he did this with John Collins, who's obviously not on the team anymore, but he threw a lot of lobs to Clint Capella on the short roll. And we've seen that with Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu, two guys that really enjoy playing with each other. And if you look at the on-off stats, plus minus, Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu as a front court tandem have some of the best numbers on the Hawks. And when you have Trae Young operating the pick and roll, Jalen stops on that short roll. Okongwu is a lot of time rolling to the basket or in that dunker spot. He's going to have a lot of opportunities just because teams can't afford to sag off on Jalen Johnson, free throw line extended, and give him that space to be able to make a decision to either, sling that pass open to the corner, say, that's Bogdan Bogdanovic or even Zachary Visacek in the corner. That's going to be a lot of spacing for this team. And if Okongwu's cutting to the rim, teams are going to need to make a conscious decision. Do I send a body to Jalen to make that pass a little harder? Do I really close out to Visacek? Do I stick the low man on Okongwu to prevent the dunker spot? Like, there's going to be a lot of questions that teams are going to need to make. And I think that that's the biggest reason why they work so well, because there's such a dynamic playmaking aspect between the two. And since Jalen Johnson has shot the 3 ball a bit better, he started out really hot last year and probably a bit too hot from where he was probably going to end up. He ended up shooting 35% on the year on just over 3 attempts per game, which honestly, if he keeps that number, if that keeps rising, like we saw so many Hawks last year, DeAndre Hunter, Garrison Matthews, Bogdan Bogdanovic, so many of these guys had career years from 3, and even Vik Krejci, if you want to throw his name in there. So if that 3-point progression continues, there's so many avenues that Jalen can play off a Trae that make them such a lethal duo.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, I think you talked about the other teammates who can benefit from Jalen just because of his playmaking ability. And because I know one question people had when we trade DeJounte, well, who's going to be able to create for others or be able to create in general? And I think that's something they're expecting Jalen to be able to take another step in as well this year in his development to help with that. And again, it's coming from a different part of the court. It's not coming from the back court. It's coming from the front court now, which could help. And you mentioned also the numbers with Okongwu. This is one of the reasons why I could see, we've heard rumors Okongwu's minutes are going to increase this year. Does that mean we'll start? We'll have to see. But obviously, I'm excited for that combo. So then that leads me to my next question with Jalen. You mentioned and you touched on a little bit about some things that you think, if he could take the next step in certain areas of his game. But what do you think is the most important thing? Obviously, you have a guy like Quinn who wants him to take more threes. He is a big space shoot, guy. Is it the 3 ball? Does Jalen need to get to 38%, 39%? Is it just being a overall scorer? Is it even just maybe his defensive end that he needs to take the biggest leap if he's going to maybe reach that level we want him to reach with the team?
I think as far as the 3-point shot, I think that will come. I don't know if it necessarily gets to 38, 39%, especially on that volume. But for me, I think defensively, something that he's already great at is, help side rim protection. And but a lot of the time, Jalen Johnson is going to be guarding the other team's best wing. DeAndre Hunter and Jalen Johnson, honestly, those two provide a great duo to guard opposing wings. But it seemed like Jalen just didn't get or isn't as consistent in stopping those, or not really stopping, but making life tougher on, the Jason Tatums, Brandon Ingrams, even these taller guards like Luka, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Tyrese Halliburton, as DeAndre Hunter. So I think the next step for Jalen is kind of that on-ball defense on some wings. We know he can switch onto some guards and really make life tough for them as well. But since the Hawks acquired Dyson Daniels for that DeJounte Murray trade, if he starts at the shooting guard, he'll most likely see the best opposing guard assignment on most nights.
Mm-hmm.
So Jalen Johnson is definitely going to have to step up on defense. I think his individual on-ball defense is something that if he can take that to the next level, the Hawks defensively just need to improve in general. They need to come up with a defensive identity. And I think Dyson Daniels, who I'm sure we're going to talk about later, I think he can be a big benefactor in that. But also the back line of, say, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, Kongwu, Capella, you throw Larry Nance in there as well, who they got in the DeJounte Murray trade. All of those guys that are listed in the front court individually are, I think, at least above average defenders. And if the Hawks can be solid enough on the perimeter, which they haven't been the last few years, but with Kobe Buffkin, Dyson Daniels, Vit Krejci, Risa Shea projects to be a good defender, I think defensively that's something that they need to step up and create an identity to really cement themselves back in that top 6 position in the East. So yeah, defensively, Jalen Johnson, I'm looking for a huge step up on that on-ball department for him.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if he does that, obviously, like you said, it gives you just multiple options, multiple defenders, guys who can switch, especially if Dyson starts. Having switch versatility in the lineup is very important. It's something I felt like a couple of seasons ago the Hawks really couldn't do, even last year to a certain extent, where you just didn't have a lot of guys who could switch. So if someone's having to switch, it's usually a mismatch for the other team. And that can lead to, obviously some defensive issues and some defensive liabilities out there. Now, let's go more future-sided here. Obviously, Jalen is currently in the process of potentially getting a new contract. So my question is, if you were the Hawks and you're the front office, you're Landry, are you comfortable giving Jalen max money this offseason? Or are you kind of like, let this season play out, then we'll see what happens now? Because I believe they have his rights, so it's not like he's in danger in terms of like, oh, he can just walk. You at least have the ability to match if they went to restricted free agency. But where do you stand on terms of maybe making that type of commitment to him long term?
Put me on the spot here. I think for me, it's more about being secure, and the Hawks, a lot of their talent comes through the draft. A lot of their, Trae Young, they technically, traded for him on draft night, but still through the draft, if you want to say that. And Jalen Johnson, obviously they've got Onyeka Okongwu, Kobe Buffkin, Risa Shea. They're a lot of their young core, and with the exception of Dyson Daniels, is through the draft. And if they want to keep those here, I think they do need to throw a lot of money at Jalen, potentially that max, to kind of, make his confidence go up and say, hey, we think that you're the guy for the future. And regardless of what happens with Trae Young after the season, doesn't look like the Hawks are going to think about trading Trae for the rest of this season. But if Atlanta's pretty bad this season and doesn't take a step up at the end of 2025, it wouldn't shock me if they really explore trading Trae Young. That would make Jalen officially the franchise player. And, with his progression, I think then you'd have to throw him a max. So if he takes that step up and you already give him the max before this season, that lets him know that he and Trae are kind of the future if they take that step up like they're projected to this season. So I think you can throw a lot of money at Jalen this season for his confidence, security, but as well as just solidifying a core that you want to retool the roster around.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, obviously I put you on the spot like you said, but, it's something that I think it's not talked about as a lot, but it is a discussion with Jalen, because that is a decision that you have to make on him soon. And I know some people are concerned about health because he did miss some games due to some ankle injuries, and he had the the forearm injury as well. So hopefully health is really good this season for him as well, because there's a lot of huge expectations for him going into this this upcoming campaign with the Atlanta Hawks as they attempt to, make the postseason, as we assume that is the goal, and they do their thing, because I'm excited to see how everything kind of fits together with a lot of the young talent that we have. And now, speaking of young talent, we switch over to our Olympians, Bogdanovich, Dyson Daniels playing right now. Actually, I believe they play tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I think it's 8:30 Eastern in the morning.
Yes. So if you want to see that, you can watch that Olympics. It will be an NBC or USA or wherever they're going to have it. But, those two are facing off. And a big topic of discussion this offseason in the Hawks circles has been who will start next to Trae Young. A lot of people have made cases for Bogdanovich. A lot of people have made cases for Dyson. Some have even made cases for Ricochet, and others have made cases for Kobe Buffkin. Where do you stand on that right now? Because it feels like they could go Bogi because he's the comfortable. Technically, that backcourt was the backcourt that got to Eastern Conference Finals, so you can't say it doesn't work. There's history. There's a lot of confidence, I'm sure, with Quinn. And because Dyson's the unknown, but Dyson, you think, okay, what was our biggest issue? Point of attack defense. He immediately fixes that. And that could, just for the starting lineup as a whole, really help. So where do you stand right now on who should be maybe starting next to Trae Young at the start of the season?
Yeah, as of right now, I would start Dyson Daniels at the 2 if I was Quinn Snyder. I think the biggest thing, like I said earlier, the Hawks need to establish a defensive identity. And struggling so bad at the point of attack like they did last season with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, they just could not stay in front of their guy. And they gave a lot of teams the middle of the lane. And you saw in that Chicago Bulls playing game, Kobe, White, Ayo Dosunmu, and especially White, he drove so many times through the middle of the defense. And it was kind of the same old story with how the Hawks lost a lot of games last season, other than injury, of course. But I think Dyson Daniels fixes a lot of those issues. He's one of the best young defenders in the league. And honestly, I've talked to some Pelicans fans. They think some of them think he's a better guard defender than Herb Jones. Obviously, Jones first team all defense, going to be that more versatile defender and can guard maybe more spots than Dyson Daniels. But individually, I've heard a lot of Pelicans fans sing his praises. So with that being said, I think I'm really high on Dyson Daniels' defense. I think that also on offense, while his shot is not the best, I mean, he only shot 30, I would think it's 31% from 3 on 2.2 attempts per game. So not the greatest spacing wise there. But how he shot the ball in FIBA has been encouraging. It's not necessarily going to translate to the NBA, but something specifically offensively about Dyson Daniels that has encouraged me is how he's played off of Josh Giddey in this Olympics. Now, Josh Giddey's not obviously the engine that Trae Young is on offense. And if you replace Giddey with Trae Young, I'm curious to see how Dyson is going to play off that. They didn't have a lot of good spacing in New Orleans, so that maybe contributed a little bit about Dyson's shooting struggles there as well. So I think the biggest thing for me is you got to start Dyson at the 2 just because of his defensive ability. Throw him on the best guard on the opposing offense. And you're going to have guys like DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu, and Nance are also switchable bigs to throw at some of these wing guys. So I would start Dyson Daniels at the 2. And offensively, he's a smart decision maker. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He's a good finisher around the rim. And he attacks closeouts well. If he can get that 3-point shot up just a little bit more, it would make his driving ability that much more effective because he'll be able to attack some closeouts and kind of get to the basket. So I think Dyson Daniels is your shooting guard position if you were to ask me right now.
Yeah, and I also think too, you got to think about the bench. If you take Bogi off the bench, I mean, where's the scoring punch coming from? I think that's something, because obviously you want lineup balance for all your rotations. Where's the balance? And if you move him to starting lineup, you have that guy or that 6th man. I guess that would be Ricochet, which, I mean, depends if how we feel about Ricochet being the 6th man. It just depends on how people feel about him and et cetera. So, I feel like Dyson has been the popular pick, but, I definitely can see people seeing Bogi still maybe potentially starting in that spot potentially. And now that leads me to my next question, which I kind of brought up in my last episode. Not as big of a discussion topic, but something that needs to also be decided. The backup four spot behind Jalen. I think a lot of people came into the offseason thinking Gay will be the guy, right? I mean, I think that was what a lot of people thought coming in before the trades. Now you've acquired some guys. We've seen Summer League. Now people are like, could it be somebody else? Is Vic Krejci in play? Because he technically could play that spot. Could Larry Nance? Because he can play both. Even though a lot of people say center, if they keep Capella, I mean, I feel like maybe he'd be better. I know. I feel like he'd be better suited maybe playing at the 4 if that was the case. But I don't know. Obviously, you still have Gay. Or is it someone else that maybe we're not thinking about? What is your overall impression of that backup 4 spot right now?
Yeah, that's really tough to say. I think, honestly, that's more difficult than trying to guess the starting shooting guard because you mentioned Larry Nance. I think he can play the 4 if Okongwu plays the 5. You know, with Capella, that's a bit of a spacing issue there offensively. But both Nance and Okongwu has shown the ability to at least willingness to shoot the 3 ball a little bit more. Nance in New Orleans had to play the 5 because their spacing was not the greatest. So he shot a lot of corner threes last season. So I'd look for him to be the backup 4 if Okongwu is the backup 5. But if Okongwu starts and let's say Capella is traded, they bring Nance in at the backup 5. I can definitely see Mohamed Gay at the 4 because Nance is kind of like that small ball center again, and you want a little bit more size maybe with Bogi at that backup 4. And also that the trade that the Hawks made a little bit confusing in my opinion, honestly, was EJ Liddell traded for David Roddy, and the Suns actually ended up releasing Liddell, which was strange to me. But Roddy to me is a kind of a weird fit because offensively, yeah, he's going to shoot the 3 ball. He's more just a kind of a catch and shoot guy on offense, but he's a kind of an undersized wing, but he's really physical. So if you're looking for more physicality, left side, you might look to play Roddy over Gay at that 4 position. But if you need the length, you need a little bit more ball handling, you want to play faster, it might be Mohamed Gay. So there between Nance and what happens with Capella, Gay, Roddy, and you mentioned Vic Krejci, who can play really the 1, 3, or 4. The 1 is kind of a bit of a stretch there, but in a pinch. So there's a lot. It's a logjam there for that backup 4 position for sure.
Yeah, it's like I said, with the summer league performance and some people saying I don't know if Ye's ready yet. I get there being questions, but I think again with what some of the moves they've made, they've provided now options. It's not just it's him. We have options here. We just got to figure out what's best for the team when we're formulating the rotation and lineups that we put on the floor. Now, we kind of talked about this before we got on. We talked about Dyson not really being a point guard, right? And I mentioned this because Kobe got hurt in Summer League earlier in the offseason. When we talk about that 3rd point guard spot, I think people are like, oh, yeah, we're good. Krejci could do it. Dyson could do it. Whatever, right? Do you have that same confidence? Like, let's just say, because it's like Kobe misses games or Trae sits out a game. Is that something the Hawks may need to look more into? That is that maybe where you see a guy like Keaton Wallace maybe get called up potentially for that role? What people said we're good, but are we good?
I was gonna say, I think Keaton Wallace is really going to help the Hawks this season. Whether that's an injury, not just it would be unfortunate, but whether Kobe Buffkin gets hurt or Trae Young could get hurt. I think those are your 2 main point guards. Dyson can run point guard. Obviously, he came into the league as one, but I don't know if the Hawks specifically want them running the type of offense that Quinn Snyder likes to run. So if they play him more at the 2/3 position, that opens room for Keaton Wallace to come up and make an impact in his limited amount of time for his number of games that he has on his 2-way with the main squad. And I was really impressed by him in the summer league. The way that he was able to, just take other teams out of their actions, avoid picks, and the screen navigation was really good. And the 3 ball was really impressive as well. I think, between him and Jarkel Joyner, those 2 guys they're such good defenders at the perimeter. But I think Wallace just has that offensive edge over Joyner, which is why he ended up getting that contract. And I think he can really help the Hawks. It's similar to his younger brother, Cason Wallace, with the Thunder. I think they play very similarly. And if there's some injury troubles, I think Keaton Wallace is going to be a huge help. So I see him being honestly that backup point guard, if backup third string point guard, if injuries should come up this season.
Yeah, and listen, that's why you have those two-way guys. They almost like the emergency guys, like, oh, we got to have one more person step in, but you want some guys that you feel like, maybe have a more development to go. So again, you may play them and they may perform better than what you expect. It happens all the time in this league. Yeah. So I guess now with where the team is, how are you feeling about the Atlanta Hawks going into the season if everything stays the same? I know a lot of people want Clint Capella off the team. And if you also feel that way, go ahead. You can go ahead and say that. But if they do stay where they are, how do you feel? Do you feel better than you felt last year? Do you think the team is better? Some people think it may be a subtraction by addition or like addition by subtraction. So like what is your overall feeling on the Atlanta Hawks in the offseason they've had and now going into this period where you're getting closer to camp and the season will be here in 2-3 months?
I think I do feel a little bit better than last season. And just because, the guys that they have, I think fit a little bit better. And even before the Hawks traded for DeJounte Murray in the summer of 2022, the offense before he got to Atlanta, was still really good. And, Trae Young leading that offense, it's been rarely ever that the Hawks have had really a lot of trouble scoring the ball. And when you get rid of DeJounte Murray and bring in a guy like Dyson Daniels, Larry Nance, and not to mention those that unprotected Lakers pick, who knows what can come of that? I think that's going to be a very valuable pick for the Hawks. I think Landry Fields did a good job recuperating the value after they did trade for Murray initially 2 summers ago. So there's that. But yeah, I think the Hawks are in a better position because they're a little bit more balanced on both sides of the floor. Now, I think this team is still mainly more of a scoring threat than kind of like your lockdown defensive team, like, say, the Minnesota Timberwolves or the Orlando Magic. But they definitely have more defenders, especially on the perimeter, more options than they had in the past. And defensively, that's just something where they need to improve. If they can get to even the bottom top 22 or top 20, that would be great because they're likely to have a top 10 offense with Trae Young and and Jalen Johnson especially. So I do think they're sitting in a better position than they were, but at the same time, I don't think they're done making moves. There are a lot of centers on this roster. I mean, Clint Capella, Onyeka Okongwu. You had Dominic Barlow in there, who he's 6'9", but he's a two-way center. So Capella, Okongwu, Nance, Zeller, Barlow. I mean, that's 5 centers right there. So I think they're still going to make some moves with regards to the center position. But yeah, I like so far the moves they made, and do think they're going to be a better team this year, at least on paper, in my opinion, because of it.
Yeah, and I think that's the ultimate hope is that the team just fits better, and that leads to better play, which is more consistency, which hopefully leads to wins. And that's one thing that we definitely want to see. And we'll see if they had a bigger play team. I'm sure people are like, we're the playing Hawks, so we just got to have expectations for that. But, like I said, we have to see how things go. It's going to be interesting to trade back in that pre-DeJounte Murray role, but now having a new partner go with him, like I said, to Jalen Johnson in terms of now, and that's number 2 spot for sure. And obviously you made a good point about the centers as well. I know some people, when they let Bruno walk, they were like, we still have Cody Zeller on my team. So like you said, they may make more moves. Yeah. They made more moves. So, but Mikey, I appreciate you, my guy, for coming on to the show for Believe, man. Let people know where they can find you in your pod.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on, Bryce. Check out my podcast along with Tim Ogles, the SportsEthos Atlanta Hawks podcast, on Twitter @Ethos Hawks. You can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you like to call it, @PinWizard300. And then also I do some sports writing for a couple different websites. You can find my work on Back Sports page, and also givemesport.com. So make sure to check those out. But yeah, Bryce, appreciate you letting me plug myself there for a little bit and have me on. It's always nice to talk Hawks with you. So let's see. Hopefully we're in store for a great season.
Yeah, hopefully, man. Like I said, I appreciate you taking time out to come on the show, man. Definitely talking on Hawks. Hopefully have you back on in the future as well. But guys, like I said, that is all we have for Believe in Hawks Day. Y'all know it's your boy Bryce Lewis. Follow me on Twitter, Brycey_2K. You can catch this podcast on any podcast platform, or if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe and like the video. I'm Bryce. That's Mikey. See you next time.